I'm worth $3 billion, but my fiancé thinks I work at a coffee shop. I've been living a double life for 2 years, and it was perfect, until my father decided to surprise us at dinner. What happened next destroyed everything I thought I knew about love. If you've ever wondered whether someone could truly love you for who you are, not what you have, then this story will hit you hard. Hit that subscribe button because you won't believe how this ends, and make sure to watch until the very end. The twist will leave you speechless. My name is Isabella, and I've been lying to the love of my life for 2 entire years. Every morning, I wake up in our tiny one-bedroom apartment, kiss Tom goodbye as he heads off to teach 4th grade, and then I drive to Brew and Bean Coffee Shop, where I pretend to work an 8-hour shift making lattes and wiping down tables. The truth is, I'm the heiress to Maxwell Tech Industries, worth more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes, and I've never made a real coffee in my life. You're probably wondering how someone pulls off a lie this big. Trust me, it's exhausting. I have fake pay stubs that my assistant Grace creates every 2 weeks. I drive a beaten-up Honda that I bought specifically to look broke, while my actual car, a custom Porsche, sits in a garage across town. When Tom suggests we split the grocery bill, I act like $20 matters to me. When he saves up for months to take me to a nice restaurant for our anniversary, I pretend it's the fanciest place I've ever been, even though I own stock in the company that owns the chain. The worst part isn't the logistics of the lie, though. It's watching the man I love stress about money every single day. Tom lies awake at night worrying about his student loans. He clips coupons and shops at thrift stores and talks about how we'll have to save for years before we can afford a house. Meanwhile, I could buy him a mansion with my lunch money, but I can't tell him because I'm terrified of what might happen if I do. See, I learned early that being rich changes how people see you. In college, I made the mistake of being honest about my family's money. Suddenly, I had more friends than I knew what to do with, but none of them actually cared about me. They cared about what I could do for them. The guys I dated either wanted me to fund their startup dreams, or they were intimidated by my wealth and felt like less of a man around me. One ex-boyfriend actually told me he felt like he was dating my bank account instead of me. When I met Tom at a community volunteer event, I was so tired of all of that. He was different, kind, genuine, passionate about helping kids learn and grow. He talked about wanting to make a difference in the world, not just make money. When he asked what I did for work, I panicked and said the first thing that came to mind. I work at a coffee shop. The lie just snowballed from there. The hardest part is that Tom has very strong opinions about wealthy people. He sees the inequality in his classroom every day. Kids who can't afford school supplies while others have everything handed to them. He talks about how rich people are disconnected from reality, how they don't understand what real problems look like. Every time he goes on one of these rants, my heart breaks a little more because I know he's talking about people like me, and I don't know how to tell him that not all of us are heartless. My father, Robert, thinks I'm completely insane. He's the CEO of Maxwell Tech, and he's been pressuring me to tell Tom the truth since day one. Isabella, he says during our weekly business meetings that Tom thinks are visits with sick relatives, this is ridiculous. You're planning to marry this man, and he doesn't even know who you are. What happens when you have to sign a prenup? What happens when you want to start the family foundation we discussed? What happens when the media finds out? I always brush off his concerns because what Tom and I have feels so real. When we're together, I'm not the Maxwell Tech heiress. I'm not the woman who sits in board meetings deciding the fate of thousands of employees. I'm just Isabella, the girl who burns toast and can't figure out how to fold fitted sheets properly. Tom loves that version of me, the imperfect, relatable version. He brings me flowers he grows in his tiny garden instead of expensive bouquets. He writes me little notes and leaves them in my fake work uniform. When I have a bad day at my pretend job, he makes my favorite pasta and lets me complain about difficult customers who don't actually exist. But the lies keep getting more complex. When Tom proposed 6 months ago with a ring he'd been saving for all year, a modest little diamond that probably cost him 2 months' salary. I cried not because I was happy, but because I was overwhelmed with guilt. I could afford any ring in the world, but this simple band meant more to me than anything money could buy because he'd sacrificed for it. Wedding planning has been a nightmare. Tom wants to keep everything budget-friendly. He suggests we have the reception at the community center where he volunteers. He talks about borrowing his uncle's old car for transportation. He researches affordable photographers and gets excited about saving money on flowers by using grocery store arrangements. Meanwhile, I sit there nodding and agreeing while my phone buzzes with messages from Grace asking about private jet schedules for board meetings I'm attending under the guise of visiting sick relatives. The close calls have been getting worse. Last month, I accidentally grabbed my platinum credit card instead of my fake debit card at the grocery store. Tom noticed the different card, and I had to lie and say it was a new account with better rewards. 2 weeks ago, my father's driver almost picked me up from the coffee shop when my car was in for maintenance. I had to sprint 3 blocks and hide behind a dumpster until he left. Grace covers for me constantly, telling business contacts that I'm indisposed, when really I'm home having movie nights with Tom. The stress was eating me alive, but I kept telling myself it was worth it. Tom loved me for me, not for what I could give him. That felt like something precious and rare. But deep down, I was starting to wonder, if Tom really knew me, all of me, including the wealth and the business responsibilities and the complicated family dynamics, would he still love that person? And if he wouldn't, then what did that say about our relationship? Everything came crashing down last Tuesday. My father called me that morning while Tom was at work. "Isabella," he said in that tone that meant he wasn't asking, he was telling, "We're having dinner tonight. You, me, and Tom. I've made reservations at Le Bernardin." My blood went cold. Le Bernardin is one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Tom would never agree to go there, and he'd definitely wonder how we could afford it. "Dad, no, I'm not ready. Tom isn't ready. We need more time." "You've had 2 years," he said firmly. "This charade ends tonight. I'll see you both at 8. I spent the entire day in a panic. I called Grace crying, begging her to help me figure out a way around this. I considered telling Tom I was sick. I even thought about breaking up with him before dinner just to avoid the whole confrontation. But deep in my heart, I knew my father was right. The lie had grown too big, and it was destroying me from the inside out. When Tom came home from work that evening, I was a wreck. He took one look at me and immediately went into caretaker mode, which just made me feel worse. "Hey, what's wrong? Did something happen at work?" He sat next to me and pulled me into his arms, and I almost broke down and told him everything right then. Instead, I said, "My father wants to take us out to dinner tonight to celebrate our engagement." Tom's face lit up. He'd been wanting to meet more of my family, and I'd been making excuses for months. "That's great. Where are we going?" "Le Bernardin," I said quietly. His expression changed immediately. "Isabella, that place costs like $300 per person. I can't afford that, and neither can your dad if he's retired and dealing with medical bills like you said." I made up some story about how he'd been saving for a special occasion, and Tom reluctantly agreed to go. He spent an hour getting ready, changing his shirt 3 times because he wanted to make a good impression. He Googled the restaurant's dress code and worried that his nicest tie wasn't nice enough. Watching him stress about fitting into my world, my real world, made me realize how wrong I'd been to keep him from it. We arrived at Le Bernardin, and I could see Tom's discomfort immediately. He kept looking around at the fancy decor and checking the prices on the menu. The hostess knew me by name, which I quickly explained away by saying I'd called to confirm our reservation. Tom seemed to buy it, but I could tell he was overwhelmed. Then my father arrived, and everything went to hell. Robert walked in like he owned the place, which, knowing my father's investment portfolio, he probably did. He had his usual security detail trailing behind him, and every staff member in the restaurant immediately snapped to attention. The manager personally escorted him to our table, calling him Mr. Maxwell, and asking about his wife and his recent trip to Dubai. Tom's face went through about 5 different expressions in the span of 10 seconds. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and then something that looked like horror. He looked at my father, then at me, then back at my father. "Isabella," my father said, completely oblivious to the tension, "you look lovely. How's the European division running? I know you've been putting in long hours with the Barcelona expansion." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Tom was staring at me with this look I'd never seen before, like he was seeing a stranger. "European division?" he said quietly. "Isabella, what is he talking about?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My father, finally realizing what was happening, looked between us with genuine surprise. "Tom doesn't know, does he?" he said. "Isabella, please tell me you haven't been lying to this man for 2 years." That's when Tom understood. I watched the realization wash over his face like a physical blow. "Maxwell," he said slowly, "as in Maxwell Tech Industries, as in the Maxwell family that's worth billions of dollars." He looked at me, and his voice was barely a whisper. "Isabella, who are you?" I tried to explain, tried to make him understand why I'd lied, but every word that came out of my mouth just made it worse. Tom sat there listening as I told him about the fake job, the fake financial struggles, the elaborate web of lies I'd built around our entire relationship. His face went from hurt to angry to something that looked almost like disgust. "So when I was stressing about how we'd afford our wedding," he said, his voice getting louder, "you could have paid for it with your pocket change. When I was losing sleep over my student loans, you were secretly worth more money than I'll see in 100 lifetimes. When you let me pay for dinner dates and split grocery bills, you were just, what? Playing some kind of game?" "It wasn't a game," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I have. But who are you, Isabella?" Tom stood up from the table, and I could see other diners starting to stare. "Because the person I fell in love with doesn't exist. She was a character you created. The real you has been lying to me every single day for 2 years." He pulled the engagement ring off his finger and set it on the table. "I need to think about this. I need time to figure out if anything between us was real." And then he walked out, leaving me crying in the middle of the most expensive restaurant in the city, while my father sat there with a look that said he'd told me this would happen. The next week was the worst of my life. Tom wouldn't answer my calls or texts. He took time off from work, and when I went by the school, they said he was dealing with a family emergency. I sent flowers, letters, gifts, all of which came back unopened. Grace tried to convince me that he'd come around, that he just needed time to process everything, but I was starting to think I'd lost him forever. I threw myself into work, staying at the office until midnight every night, just to avoid going home to our empty apartment. But everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of the life I'd built with Tom, his coffee mug in the sink, his lesson plans on the kitchen table, the engagement photos we'd taken just last month, when I thought I could keep living in this perfect bubble forever. On Friday, exactly 1 week after the disaster dinner, I came home to find Tom sitting on our couch. My heart nearly stopped. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept much either, but he was there. "We need to talk," he said. I sat down across from him, afraid to get too close, afraid to hope too much. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued, "and some research." He pulled out a folder filled with printouts, articles about Maxwell Tech, about our charity work, about the schools and hospitals my family had funded over the years. "Did you know your company provides free technology to underprivileged schools across the country?" he asked. "Did you know Maxwell Tech has one of the best employee benefit packages in the industry, and that your father has never laid off workers even during economic downturns?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The Isabella I fell in love with, the one who volunteers at the community center, who cares about making the world better, who cries during sad movies and burns toast every morning, she's real, isn't she? The money didn't create those qualities, it just complicated them. "Yes," I whispered. That's all real. That's who I am when I'm not worried about being judged for my family's money. Tom was quiet for a long moment. I understand why you lied, he said finally. I've spent this week thinking about all the things I said about wealthy people, and I realized some of it wasn't fair. I was so focused on the inequality I see every day that I painted everyone with money as the enemy. But you're not the enemy, Isabella. You're someone who was so afraid of being reduced to her bank account that she hid the best parts of herself. He moved closer to me on the couch. But here's the thing. I can't marry someone who doesn't trust me enough to be honest, and you can't marry someone who you think will only love part of you. We talked for hours that night. I told him everything about my previous relationships, about why I was so scared, about the pressure I felt to live up to my family's reputation while also wanting to be normal. He told me about his own fears, about feeling inadequate compared to my world, about wondering if he could ever fit into a life of board meetings and charity galas. I don't want you to fit into my world, I told him. I want us to build our own world together, one where I can be honest about who I am, and you can be proud of who you are, and we can figure out how to use our different strengths to make something beautiful. Tom picked up the engagement ring from where it had been sitting on our coffee table all week. If we do this, he said, we do it with complete honesty. No more lies, no more pretending. I want to know about board meetings and business trips. I want to understand what your life really looks like. And I want to keep volunteering at the community center, I said. I want to help you with your dream of opening that after-school program. I want to use my resources to make the kind of difference you've always believed in. He smiled for the first time in a week and slipped the ring back onto my finger. So, does this mean I'm going to marry a billionaire? You're going to marry me, I said. The money is just complicated baggage that comes with the package. I can handle complicated, he said, and kissed me. We're still figuring it out, honestly. Tom is slowly meeting the real me, the business executive, the board member, the woman who has to make decisions that affect thousands of people. I'm learning to trust that he loves all of me, not just the parts that are easy to love. We're planning a wedding that reflects both of our worlds, elegant but meaningful, expensive but not excessive. The funny thing is, now that the secret is out, I feel more like myself than I have in years. I don't have to pretend to worry about money anymore, but I also don't have to pretend that having money solves all my problems. Tom sees me completely now, the good, the bad, and the complicated, and he chooses to stay. Looking back, I realized that the lie I thought was protecting our love was actually poisoning it. Real love isn't about hiding the difficult parts of yourself. It's about trusting someone enough to show them everything and believing they'll love you anyway. So, what do you think? Was Isabella right to hide her wealth, or was Tom justified in feeling betrayed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to hear more stories about love, money, and the lies we tell ourselves, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Trust me, the stories I have coming up will make this one look simple. See you in the next video.